Capacity, that means we are talking about they have some capability that can be measured. If you're talking about lung volume and capacity, refer to the volume of air associated with different phase of respiratory cycle. Lung volume are directly measured. Lung capacity are informed from lung volume, and the instrument that can be used for these type of measurement will be called the spirometer. Now there are the four type of the lung volume: tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. Okay, so these are the four types of the volume: tidal, inspiratory, expiratory pressure, and residual volume. Now, tidal volume, that means a normal volume of air inspired or expired during a quiet breathing. Normal volume of air that can be inhaled or exhaled. सामान्य ब्रीथिंग कंडीशन में जब हम नॉर्मल कंडीशन में सांस ले रहे होते हैं विदाउट पुटिंग एनी एफर्ट, normal rate, so I'm talking with you and just I'm also respecting it. So in during that time, amount of air that I inhaled or exhaled, that we call the tidal volume, and it would be approx 500 ml. So this is called the tidal volume. So tidal volume क्या होता है? नॉर्मल ब्रीथिंग टाइम में, सामान्य ब्रीथिंग में कितना अमाउंट ऑक्सीजन, कितना अमाउंट एयर हम इनहेल कर रहे हैं या एक्सहेल कर रहे हैं, दैट विल बी टाइडल वॉल्यूम। और ये कितना होता है? 500 ml. टीवी इक्वल टू 500 ml. ओके, अभी इस ग्राफ को हम डिस्कस करेंगे लेटर, पहले हम समझने चालू क्या होता है। सेकेंड इज द इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वैल्यू. इंस्पिरेटरी मीन्स इनहेल, reserve means to keep something preserved. So the extra volume of air inhaled, extra volume of air inhaled after the tidal volume. एक सामान्य ब्रीथिंग के बाद अगर हम कोई एक्स्ट्रा एयर को इनहेल कर रहे हैं बाय एफर्ट, तो दैट विल बी कॉल्ड द इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम. जो सामान्य ब्रीथिंग, हम क्वाइट ब्रीथिंग जो हमारी है, नॉर्मल जो ब्रीथिंग है, इसके बाद जब हम एक लंबी सांस लेते हैं और हम कुछ एयर को, एक्स्ट्रा वॉल्यूम ऑफ एयर को इनहेल्ड करते हैं, दैट विल बी कॉल्ड द इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम. जब आप नॉर्मली सांस ले रहे होते हो तो बीच बीच में एक लंबी सांस लेते हैं. ओके, दैट इज द इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वैल्यू. एंड 3000 ml in adult male, or you can say 3300 oblique 1900 in the female. So 3000 in adult male में लेंगे और लगभग 1900 in the female में लेंगे. So two things is there. First is the tidal volume. Now the tidal volume क्या होता है? A quiet breathing. How much amount of the air we inhale or exhale. एक सामान्य श्वसन दर में जो हम कितना अमाउंट एयर इनहेल कर रहे हैं और एक्सहेल कर रहे हैं, ये टाइडल वॉल्यूम होता है. और कितना होता है? 500 ml. इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम में क्या होता है? आफ्टर द टाइडल वॉल्यूम, the amount of extra volume, yeah, you can say the extra volume of air we that means inspirate, we inhaled, that will be called the inspiratory reserve volume, and it is a 3000 ml. Third will be expiratory reserve value. जैसे वो इंस्पिरेटरी था, एक आफ्टर टाइडल वॉल्यूम हम इनहेल कर रहे थे एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट, यहाँ पे एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट को क्या करेंगे? एक्सहेल करेंगे. So the extra volume of air that can be exhaled after the tidal volume. So tidal volume के बाद after the tidal volume, जो एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट एयर हमारे लंग्स में है उसे हम जब एक्सहेल कर रहे हैं, बाहर निकाल रहे हैं बाय रेस्पिरेटरी एफर्ट, दैट विल बी कॉल्ड एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम. जैसे अब एक लंबी सांस लेने के बाद जब हम जोर से सांस बाहर फेंकते हैं, So that will be called expiratory reserve volume, and it is 1100 in the adult male. So these are the three things. I hope it will be very easy and clear to everyone. Tidal वॉल्यूम क्या होता है, इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम क्या होता है, और एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम, इनके नाम में ही छुपा हुआ है मतलब. If you see the name of these things, then you will be clearly understand what they are talking about. Only you have to remember the tidal volume. If you remember the tidal volume, then inspiratory reserve volume will be okay, and expiratory reserve volume will be okay, and the residual volume will be okay. Now, if you learn the tidal volume, and what is the tidal volume? Tidal volume is just a volume of air inhaled or exhaled in a one quiet breathing या one normal breathing. एक नॉर्मल ब्रीथिंग में कितना अमाउंट, कितनी मात्रा में हवा हमने अंदर ली है या बाहर छोड़ी है. दोनों नहीं होगा, अंदर ली है और बाहर छोड़ी है, ये नहीं करना है. और है, इट इज नॉट इनहेल्ड एंड एक्सहेल्ड, इट इज इनहेल्ड और एक्सहेल्ड. Okay, be careful. It is not the amount of air that we inhaled and exhaled, it is inhaled or inhaled. Okay, so either we have to in a one normal quiet breath, how much amount of air we inhaled or exhaled, that is tidal volume. And after the tidal volume, second point will be inspiratory reserve volume. Inspiratory means inhale karna, reserve means to keep, and volume the amount. So the amount of air after the tidal volume by the maximum effort, maximum inspiratory effort. Okay, so the extra volume of air that can be inhaled after the tidal volume will be inspiratory reserve volume, while the extra volume of air that can be exhaled after the tidal volume के बाद जो extra amount का air जो हम बाहर छोड़ दें, that will be expiratory reserve volume. After that, fourth one will be the residual volume. Residual का मतलब क्या होता है? The remaining. Residual means remaining, बचा हुआ. The volume of the air left out in the lung after the forceful expiration or complete expiration. एक फोर्सफुल एक्सपिरेशन के बाद, एक फोर्सफुल सांस छोड़ने के बाद, अगर लंग्स में थोड़ी बहुत एयर बची हुई है, that will be called residual volume. Okay, so the volume of air left out in the lungs after a forceful expiration, when we are taking the breath in a normal breathing time, okay, and when we are exhaling the air, okay, when we exhale and it is a forceful exhale, the amount of the volume of air which we exhale forcefully out of the lungs, but still there is some amount of the air is left in the lungs. So the amount that is left, that is remained in the lung, it is called the residual volume. तो lungs में जो बचा हुआ air है, that will be called the residual volume, and it will be 1200 in male and 1100 in female. So these are the four volume, okay? Tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and residual volume. Now, same images you can see here. Tidal volume is there. Tidal volume denoting the quite normal breathing. Okay. Inspiratory reserve volume is there. That is showing the extra amount of air we inhaled. Okay. Let me draw so you can understand it. See, this level is normal breathing. Okay. It's a normal breathing. ये नॉर्मल श्वसन दर है जिसमें हम नॉर्मली सांस ले रहे होते हैं. इट्स अ नॉर्मल ब्रीथिंग रेट. That will be called the tidal volume, the amount of air we inhaled or exhaled. But when we extra amount of air inhaled after the tidal volume, ये extra amount of air है किसके बाद? Tidal volume के बाद. It will be called inspiratory reserve volume. Okay. And when we exhale extra amount of air after the tidal volume, tidal volume के बाद जब हम extra amount of air को exhale कर रहे हैं, बाहर निकाल रहे हैं, then it will be called the expiratory reserve volume. फिर से ये आ गया तो फिर से tidal volume है, फिर से जाएगा, फिर से inspiratory reserve volume, again inspiratory reserve volume. So these are the things. And the residual volume, this one is residual volume are those volume that is left in the lung after a forceful expiration. Forceful expiration के बाद भी अगर lungs में बचा हुआ है तो that will be residual volume. Now lung capacity is there. Volume is clear. Now the capacity we have to combination of these two or more lung volume. When we are able to combine the lung volume, then we can know what will be the capacity of the lung. Now you can see here there's a different capacity like the inspiratory capacity, expiratory capacity, functional capacity, vital capacity, and total lung capacity. Okay. So now let's start to see the first one is the inspiratory capacity. So the maximum volume of air that can be inspired after a normal tidal expiration. Maximum volume of air that can be inspired after a normal tidal expiration. एक टाइडल एक्सपिरेशन के समय, नॉर्मल टाइडल एक्सपिरेशन के समय कितना मैक्सिमम वॉल्यूम हमने इनहेल किया है, दैट विल बी कॉल्ड द कैपेसिटी, इंस्पिरेटरी कैपेसिटी. अब इंस्पिरेटरी कैपेसिटी में वैसे इंस्पिरेटरी वॉल्यूम क्या था? दैट मीन्स टेकिंग अ एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट ऑफ एयर. सो कैपेसिटी की जब हम बात करेंगे, इट विल बी कम आफ्टर द टीवी. टाइडल वॉल्यूम के बाद ही तो इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वॉल्यूम आ रहा था. And when we combine the TV and IRB, then we can understand what will be the inspiratory capacity. कितना amount of air we inhale, how much amount of air we inhale. So inspiratory capacity is the TB plus IRB. Let me show with the image, then you will understand first. See, inspiratory capacity is the TB plus IRB. This TB, that means this amount of air and this amount of air, this. Okay. When we combine the TB plus RB, this one, then we can tell it is the inspiratory capacity, how much amount we inhale. It is called inspiratory capacity. Okay. Same conditions like in the cases of the vital capacity. When inspiratory, this one, tidal, this one, and expiratory. When these three volume are combined, like the TB plus IRB plus ERB, then it will be called a vital capacity, this one. And when we combined all, it will be called the total lung capacity. How much amount of the air present in the lungs, total amount. So all the things when comes into the lungs, that will be called the total lung capacity. And when the ERB and residual value will be counted, it is called the functional residual capacity. So the first one is the inspiratory capacity, the TB plus IRB. That TB कितना था 500 and IRB 3000, तो 3500 ml हो जाएगा. Expiratory capacity, after the tidal inspiration, maximum volume of air that can be expired. तो इसमें टीबी प्लस ईआर भी एक नॉर्मल ब्रीथिंग जब हम एक्सेल कर रहे होते हैं, जब हम हवा को बाहर निकालेंगे, तो जो नॉर्मल ब्रीथिंग में हमने हवा ली है, वो भी निकल रही है और जो फोर्सफुली ली है, वो भी निकल रही है। तो बोथ आर कंबाइंड ही है। तो टीबी हमारी कितनी थी? 500 एमएल थी और ईआरवी थी 1100। तो 500 प्लस 1100 इज इक्वल टू 1600 एमएल। तो एक्सपिरेटरी कैपेसिटी विल बी 1600 एमएल। Functional residual capacity. So it is the volume of air that remain in the lungs after a normal tidal expiration. So it will be the FRC is equal to ERV plus RV. So 2300 ml. Now these are the significance of the FRC. Continuous exchange of the gases, concentration of oxygen and carbon dioxide is maintained. Breath holding is made possible. Dilution of toxic inhaled gases prevent the collapse of the lungs. These are the significance. These are the importance of the FRC, functional residual capacity. These are the factors to leave it. Now, vital capacity. Maximum amount of air expelled after the deepest possible inspiration. एक लंबी सांस लेने के बाद कितनी अमाउंट एयर हम बाहर छोड़ देते हैं. Vital capacity, the amount of air that we inhaled first, okay, and then expelled. Okay, so deepest inspiration के बाद how much amount of air we expel. So vital capacity is equal to TV. वाइटल कैपेसिटी में क्या आ जाएगा? एक तो टीवी आ जाएगा, टाइडल वॉल्यूम्स, नॉर्मल ब्रीथिंग में हमने कितना लिया था, फिर आईआरवी हमने इंस्पिरेटरी रिजर्व वैल्यू में कितना लिया था, और फिर एक्सपिरेटरी रिजर्व वैल्यू में फोर्सफुली कितना छोड़ा. तो व्हेन वी कंबाइंड ऑल दीज थ्री, टीवी प्लस आईआरवी प्लस ईआरवी, इट विल बी कॉल्ड द वाइटल capacity, that will be 4600 ml. And the importance of the vital capacity is to access the strength of the respiratory muscles. So we can determine the how respiratory muscles strength will work and what will be the strength of the respiratory muscles. Age, sex, strength, gravity, pregnancy, asides, pulmonary disease, these all the factors that is affecting on the these vital capacity. Total lung capacity. Volume of air present in the lung after a maximum inspiration. एक maximum inspiration के बाद, मैक्सिमम इंस्पिरेशन के बाद कितना अमाउंट एयर लंग्स में प्रेजेंट है. तो लंग्स में प्रेजेंट कैसे होगा? एक तुमने उसमें वाइटल कैपेसिटी देख ली, ठीक है, वाइटल कैपेसिटी प्लस आरवी. सो टोटल लंग कैपेसिटी टीएलसी इज इक्वल टू वीसी प्लस आरवी. वीसी क्या था? दिस वन वीसी, जिसमें टीपी भी है, आईआरबी भी है और ईआरबी भी है. ओके, और प्लस रेसिडुअल वॉल्यूम. तो VC means TLC, total line capacity, will include all the volumes that will be called approximate 5800 ml. Then one is another that is called the timed vital capacity or FVC, that will be the volume of the air that can be expired rapidly with maximum force following a maximum inspiration, and it is timed by the spirograph. It cannot be measured. Okay, so these are the lungs volume and lung capacity. So the respiratory system is the set of the organs that is allow a pass to breathe and exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout the body. We know how can we respirate? Okay, by inhaling and exhaling. So respiratory system, as we earlier discussed lots of time, that system means it does not mean an individual organ. System means we are talking about group of organs. So here, which type of the organs is there? You now can see there's a different organs involved in the respiration from the nose to the lungs. Okay, so nose is there, then you will see the pharynx will be there, then larynx will be there, trachea will be there, the bronchioles will be there, the alveoli will be there, and then all the lungs, alveoli and sac will be there. So these are not a part or these are not a function of an individual organs. Instead of, it is a group of organs. So yes, respiratory system, you can say it's a system. So now this system is a set of organs that allow a person to breathe and exchange the oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout the body. Now, how can they be help? It will be studied in the mechanism of respiration. When we will study about the mechanism of respiration, then you will see how we can respirate. So, by the way, now you have to just understand about the. It is a process of breathing, then exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide through the body. The integrated system of organ involved in the intake and exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxides between the body and the environment, and including the nasal passages, larynx, trachea, bronchial tubes, and the lungs. So there are the involvement of the numbers of the individual organs that will help in the respirations. Now there's a two major tasks in the respiratory system. You will see that exchanging the air between body and the outside environment, that will be called the external respiration, while bringing the oxygen to the cells and removing the carbon dioxide from the referred to as the internal respiration. Now this whole respiration can be categorized into the two different aspects. One of the external, one is the second one is the internal. Internal respiration means we are talking about the mechanism of the lungs, how the lungs will work in the lungs, how the alveoli is gonna to exchange the gases, the oxygen and carbon dioxide. While in the external respirations, they are talking about the body and environment. So between the body and environment, how the air can travel from environment to the body, that will depends upon the atmospheric pressures and the lung pressure. So all the respiratory system performs is categorized into the two major tasks: internal respiration and external respiration. Now, it is the system consisting of the tubes and is responsible for exchanging of the gas in humans by filtering incoming air and transporting it into the microscopic alveoli where the gases are exchanged. Okay, so it is the which type of the system? It is a system that consists of a tubes, because when you see there is a starting from the nostril, a tube will go simultaneously into the lungs, and that is the only thing that is responsible for exchange of the gas in the humans. So by filtering the incoming air, by transporting it to into microscopic alveoli, so where the gas will be exchanged. Now, how it will filter the incoming air? You will see in the little slider there is a function of the nostril. You know, in the nostril there is a cilia is there, there is the air, there is the mucus is there. So these all things will help into the filtering of the incoming air. And then it is a conduction system through which the air can travel into the lungs. Now, your respiratory system provides the energy needed by the cell of the body to function according to the desired task. Without the oxygen, how can you even think to survive? Now, you can understand what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, without the oxygen, is it possible to survive? Because you know, oxygen is the only thing that gives us the energy. Even the circulatory system, if you're talking about the red blood cells having the hemoglobin that will carry the oxygens to other different cell. Why is it important? Because we know cell will need the oxygen to perform their function. So if there is a no oxygen, that means no function. So all the things here that will be only involved an energy needed by the cell to perform the function according to their designated task. Okay, because we know that every cell having their specific function. Yeah, you can say they are the specialized cell. Okay, so what will happen in these cases when oxygen will develop from the lungs? There the gaseous exchange is possible inside the lungs. There's the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurred, then this oxygen will be distributed. If you remember this in the cardiovascular system, from the heart, when the blood will goes into the lungs through the right side, okay, to the right ventricle. Through the right ventricle, when blood will goes to the lungs, then the those area where it will purifies the blood, the deoxygenated blood into converted into the oxygenated blood. How? That is the only possible through the gaseous exchange. So through the that gaseous exchange, these are converted the that means they are converted the deoxygenated to the oxygenated bloods. So that means oxygen is gonna to develop inside the lungs, and that oxygen is provided to every individual cells of the body to perform their own individual function. Now in this image, you can see the structure and you can see their labelings, their name will be there. Like you can see the nasal cavity is there, nose hairs is there, epiglottis, larynx, trachea, right lungs, bronchi, heart, pleural membrane, and diaphragm. On the another side, left side, you can see paranasal sinuses will be there, respiratory center, pharynx, esophagus, left lung, pulmonary vessels, ribs, intercostal muscles, and muscle attached to the diaphragm. Now, if you go to see the function of the respiratory system is mainly well known for the uh, oxygen, okay, to gaseous exchange that will supply the body with the oxygen and dispose of the carbon dioxide. While they have also a little bit function like they filter the inspired air, they're helping in the production of the sounds. They contains the receptor for the smell in the nostril area. The receptor is present that will helping to smell something through the olfactory nerve, cranial nerves. There is some excess amount of the water and heat from the body. They will help to regulate the blood pH. So if you are going to see the respiratory tract structurally, we can divide into the two groups. One is the upper respiratory tracts and second is the lower respiratory tract. So the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract having the diverse organs. Like in the upper respiratory tract, nose is there, nasal cavity is there, and the sinuses is there, and the pharynx is there. So these are the upper respiratory tract. These are the those organ that is present in the upper sides. So it is called the upper respiratory tract: nose, nasal cavity, sinus, and pharynx. Now goes for the lower respiratory tract. You will see the larynx, trachea, bronchial tree, and lungs. So these will call the lower respiratory tract. Okay, so you have to remember when you start the different organs involved in the respiratory system, different parts of the body involved in the respiration, it will call the nose. From the nose, air will goes into inside into the nasal cavity, then it will be goes into the pharynx. Sinuses is the another blank and gap portion that will connect it to the brain. So then goes to the pharynx, from pharynx then larynx, larynx to trachea, trachea to bronchial tree, and then to the lungs. So these are the sequence of the how the air can travel into the lungs. So these all parts you can divide it into the two portion: upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. So you can say the in the upper respiratory tract, there is a nose is there, nasal cavity is there, sinuses is there, pharynx is there, and in the lower sides you can say the larynx, trachea, bronchial tree, and lungs. These classified according to the structurally. According to function, it can also be classified. So depend upon the function nature. Okay. So we can categorize again the respiratory tract into the two groups. First one is the conduction portion. Okay, conduction portion means that will only helps to conduct the air. Okay, so system of interconnecting the cavities and tubes that conduct the air into the lungs. So those organ, those part of the body that is involved into the respiration, but only as the conduction. Okay, that will help to travel the air. So according to conduction portion, nose, pharynx, larynx, trachea, and bronchi. These all the things will be only having the conduction system. Just like, for example, from the nose, the air will travel into the inside. So it is only the travel there. Okay, during the travel, it is the another things that they have also the filter the bacteria, filter the dust, yeah, the foreign particles. These all can be filtered through the nose, but nose is the only act as a conductor. So here it will goes for the conduct the air. So nose is there. In the pharynx it will be travel, and you will astonished to know that the pharynx is the those portion where the nose and mouth, Okay, that means the nostril passes, the nasal passes, and the oral passes are meet at a point. That is the pharynx. So in the pharynx is also a conduction system. The air will goes travel to the pharynx, then it will goes through in the larynx, then into the trachea, and then into the bronchi. So these all are the only portion parts of the body where air will travel into through the these portion into the lungs. Now, second portion is called the respiratory portion. That means those organs involved into the respiration that have a exactly work and they can exchange the gases. Sorry. So, in the respiratory portion, system where the exchange of respiratory gases occur, like bronchioles, alveolar ducts, and alveoli. Okay. So, like the bronchioles, alveolar ducts, and alveoli. These are the those area where gaseous exchange will occur. Okay, so where the air will come into this inside into the lungs, and then it will filter, it will exchange with the carbon dioxide. We know when we inhale the air, now you will know in the current pandemic, COVID-19, you see the oxygen level is going to down in the patient. Okay, so why oxygen level is down to the percent while in the environment there is a oxygen in the environment, there is a oxygen, then why it is goes to down into the body, and we need the oxygen cylinder, we need the centrifuger. Okay, why it is needed? Because you know in the environment, not only the oxygen, with the oxygen other gases are also there. Okay, so when we inhale the gases, it will goes into the lungs in a normal condition, in the normal patient, in a normal person I'm telling about. Okay, so in the normal person, when the we inhale these gases, it will goes into the lungs. Okay, and these gases will contains the other gases also with the oxygen. So only oxygen can be filtered while remaining gas will be expelled out. Okay, so these are the process. The lungs will contains the oxygen, and other gases will be expelled out with the carbon dioxides. Now, in the cases of the pandemic, in the cases of the COVID patient lungs having got infected, so their lung is not enough functionized. The lung is not enough to work their functions, to perform their function. So it cannot bifurcate the oxygen with the several other gases. Okay, so in if a healthy lung is there, if a healthy person is there, so their lung is having a proper function, so that can separate the oxygen with the other gases. Okay, and oxygen can be utilized, other gases can be repel out. But in the COVID patients, their lung is not able to perform the function, so it cannot separate, it cannot bifurcate the oxygen with the other gaseous. So that is the problem. We need to pure oxygen. So the lungs, the work of the lungs, the function of the lungs can be minimized. Okay, so that is the only things that while in the environment there is a lots of oxygen, we don't need to oxygen cylinder, because oxygen cylinder having the only the pure oxygen that is directly going into the lungs, and lungs is, there is no work for the lungs to separate, to clarifying, to filtering, to diversifying the oxygen from the other gases. There is no work for the lungs if you are going to the oxygen cylinder. While if you are taking the oxygen, we are taking the gases from the environment, it will goes into the lungs, then the alveoli and the alveolar ducts will helping to separate them. Oxygen will be taken out by the lung, and the other gases will be expelled out. So it is only performed when the our lungs is a normal condition. So that is the condition where in the COVID patient using the oxygen. Now you will see the human respiratory system having these parts. Organs will be there, nose will be there, having the nasal cavity and the paranasal sinuses. Pharynx will be there, larynx having the epiglottis and vocal cords, trachea, bronchi having the bronchial tree, and the lungs having the lobes of the lungs, pleural cavity, and the alveoli. Now you will see the nose are also called the external layers, divided into two half by the nasal septums. We know our nose is divided into two parts. Two nostril is there that is divided by a septum that will be called the nasal septums, and that will also at the end of the nose there will contains the paranasal sinuses where air is warmed, and the nose contains the cilia which is responsible for filtering out the foreign bodies. So we in our nose they have a mucus, they have a cilia, and they have a hair will be there. So when the air will enter into the nose, it will encounter with the cilia, it will encounter with the hairs, it will encounter with the mucus, so it can be filtered. Because when the air will travel from the environment to the nose, it can having the some dust, it can having the some small, very small particles can be that can be travel through the air, so it will goes also to inside of the body. So the first portion of the protection, it is also called our portion of the immunity. Okay, so here the nose will work as a first immunity. So it having the cilia, which is responsible for filtering these foreign bodies. So in this image, you can see there is external layers is there, inferior nasal conchae is there, middle near conchae is there, and the nasal conchae is there. Then frontal sinus is there, sphenoid sinus, internal layers, and the nasopharynx. Now, it provides an entrance for air in which the air is filtered by the coarse hair inside the nostril, as I told you earlier. It has two portions, the external and internal. Okay. So at the end of the nose, there is the internal portion, while at the starting of the nose, it's the external portion. So the external portion is supported by a framework of bone and cartilage covered with the skin and lined with the mucous membrane. So these are the portion of the external parts having a framework, because we know the skeletal and the bone having the one function that is called the framework. They're giving a proper shape. So in this cases, the external portion is supported by a framework of bone and a cartilage. So bone and cartilage are there, which are making a structure, and that is covered with the skin and lined with the mucous membrane. So that will be our nose. Okay. So you can see the nose, you can move the nose, you can just twist the nose, because you know there is a made up of the cartilage. Okay, so that is the reason you can twist, otherwise you other bones you can twist it. So the only things that you can twist your nose, because it is having a cartilage framework. Okay, and lined with the mucous membrane. The internal portion is a large cavity in the skull. Now, if you're going to see the structure of the nose into the internal portion, then having the large cavity in the skull and merging with the external nose anteriorly and communicating with the throat posteriorly. So nose will gonna to open into the throat also, you know, at the pharynx is there, okay, where it will goes to meet with the oral cavity. Now, in this structure, you can see there's a nasal concha is there, which have the superior, medial, and inferior. Frontal sinus is there. Then the nasal cavity, internal layers, nasopharynx will be, and the pharyngeal tonsils will be there. Entrance to auditory tubes will be there. Then soft palate, palatine tonsil, oropharynx, epiglottis, and the ariepiglottic fold, laryngopharynx, glottis, vocal cord, and the esophagus. On the
Now, these are the quizzes mentioned here. As you can see, question number first: which of the following statement could be applied to the external respirations? In the earlier slides, we discussed about the in what is the internal respiration and what is the external respiration. Now, in the option you can see here, there's the exchange of gases between the alveolar air and the blood in the pulmonary capillaries. That means gases का exchange होना एक alveolar air और blood pulmonary capillary के बीच में. Exchange of the dissolved gases between the blood in tissue and capillaries of the body. So, इन टिश्यू एंड कैपिलरीज और बॉडी के बीच की बात की जा रही है. Production of carbon dioxide from organic molecules in the cell by using oxygen, the inhalation of atmospheric air into the lungs followed by exhalation. So as you can know, external respiration is the exchange of gases between the alveolar air and the blood in the pulmonary capillaries. So answer A is correct here. Which anatomical structure does the conducting zone of lower respiratory tract contain? Lower respiratory tract. If you remember, we classified the respiratory tract according to structure into the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. In upper respiratory tract, there will be a nose, nasal cavity, sinuses. These are the upper respiratory tract, like the mouth, larynx. While in the lower respiratory tract contains the bronchioles, trachea, bronchial tree, bronchioles, alveoli. These are the lower respiratory tract. Now, conducting zone is means the area from where the air will be traveled. सो ऐसे कौन कौन से स्ट्रक्चर है जिनसे लोअर रिस्पिरेटरी ट्रैक्ट्स के जिनमें एयर ट्रेवल करती है, जो एज अ कंडक्टिंग जोन काम करते हैं? यूएसचियन ट्यूब, लैरिंग्स एंड ट्रैकिया, इट इज इनकरेक्ट. प्राइमरी, सेकेंडरी एंड टर्सरी ब्रोंकाई एंड ब्रोंकियल्स, यस इट इज करेक्ट. What is the function of cilia on the cells that lines a bronchial tree? Bronchial trees की जो walls होती हैं, bronchial जो cells होती हैं, उनके जो बाहर जो cilias होते हैं, what is the function of that cilia? They help mix the inhaled fresh air with the residual air contained in the bronchial tree. No, it is incorrect. They show the movement of air to allow for efficient exchange of gases. No. They move the mucus on the cell surface up to the bronchial tree. Yes, they move the mucus on the cell, so it is correct. Even they not filter the particles from inhaled air. So answer C is correct here. What term is applied to the exchange of dissolved gases between the capillary blood body tissue? A. Internal respiration, external respiration, ventilation, and cellular respiration. So, what term is applied to the exchange of dissolved gases between the capillary blood and the body tissue? It would be internal respiration. So, answer A is correct here. Between which two anatomical structure does the larynx lies? Larynx किसके बीच में रहता है? कौन कौन से anatomical structure के बीच में? Nares और conchi के बीच में? No, it is absolutely incorrect. Epiglottis and trachea? Yes. Epiglottis और trachea के बीच में larynx placed होता है. Conchi and glottis के बीच में भी नहीं होते हैं. Glottis और epiglottis के बीच में भी नहीं होते हैं. So answer B is correct. What is the function of ciliated cell of the respiratory epithelium? जो respiratory epitheliums में जो ciliated cells होते हैं उनके क्या function हो सकते हैं? To trap inhaled particles not removed by nasal cavity? No. Respiratory epithelium में ciliated cells की बात कर रहे हैं हम. To secrete a mucus layer onto the epithelium? No. To move the mucus and trap the particles of the bronchial tree? Yes. To move mucus and trap the particles of the bronchial tree. So that will be correct answer. Answer C is correct here. The goal of respiration is to control the concentration of which substance dissolved in blood? जो respiration की goal होती है वो किसके concentration को control करने के लिए होती हैं जो dissolve होते हैं blood में? ऑक्सीजन के लिए? करेक्ट है ऑक्सीजन के लिए, बट इट इज ओनली ऑक्सीजन? नो. ऑक्सीजन, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड? यस, इट इज बोथ करेक्ट. ऑक्सीजन और कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड both concentration could be controlled, but it is not only these two. There's one another one, that is the hydrogen ion. So oxygen, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen ion, for the all three, it is control the concentration that will dissolve in the bloods. So answer C is correct here. The wall of the which of the following structure are all supported by the cartilage except for one of them? कौन सा ऐसा है जो cartilage से supported नहीं है? Trachea, yes it is cartilage supported होते हैं. Bronchi भी cartilage support होते हैं और larynx भी cartilage से supported होते हैं except the bronchioles. Bronchioles is a structure that is not supported by the cartilage. So answer A is correct here. Which constitute the respiratory membrane? Respiratory membranes को क्या बनाती हैं? Parietal and visceral pleural and enclosed pleural fluids? No, absolutely incorrect. Capillary and alveolar epithelial cell, their basement membrane and adjacent fluid? Yes. Capillary and alveolar epithelial cell, their basement membranes and the adjacent fluid will be correct answer for the respiratory membrane constituents. Which statement may be used to define a bronchioles? कौन सा स्टेटमेंट है जो ब्रोंकियल्स को डिफाइन कर सकता है? They are the airway that branch from the left and right primary bronchi. which is okay. It is a airway, but branch from the left and right from the bronchi, it is not absolutely correct. That means we cannot define the bronchioles like that. They are kept open by the C-shaped ring of cartilage. Their wall have supporting cartilage between the smooth muscle. Their wall contain the smooth muscle but no cartilage. Yes. Their wall contains the smooth muscles, but there is a no cartilage in the bronchioles. So answer D is correct here. Now these are the reference book like the Tartora, Bell Melinda, Robin Scott Trons, Watkins, and some web link is there. So you can go through these reference and read out about the respiratory system. One another book having the Ross and Wilson. So you can go all these three books and read about the respiratory system. Okay, so today lecture is going to finish here. We will meet again in the next class. Till then, thank you.